Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's the Tuesday night nonfiction book club. And so tonight we are continuing on in our quest of the Handbook to Practical Disaster Preparedness for the Family by Dr. Arthur T. Bradley. I will tell you, I had planned on only doing one chapter tonight, first aid, because it was so extensive. I had somebody lined up to help us with this, a nurse who was going to help me present some of the first aid issues. And unfortunately, she's not feeling too well tonight, so she may not be here to join us. Um, but we will survive. How's that? How many of you were here for the interview last night? Gosh, what a phenomenal time that was. A American Chris, just a wealth of knowledge. Just what a font of knowledge. Just unbelievable how he's acquired so much in a relatively short period of time, as far as his life compared to mine. And oh gosh, I was just totally amazed and impressed. And he has agreed to come back, so I'm very, very happy with that. GGG Farms, welcome. So I'm very happy. He and I spent another half hour on in the back channel after we finished the live last night. And oh gosh, it was just unbelievable. He's going to hook me up with Bill Forstchen. And so Bill Forstchen is the author of the 1 Second After series. He's also going to hook me up with Jeff Kirkham. And so Jeff Kirkham, let me see if I can get his book here. Yeah, here it is. So this is Jeff Kirkham's book. And Jeff Kirkham is the CEO the founder and CEO of Black Rifle Coffee Company. Look, gosh, can you believe this pile I have here of books that I need to read? So I've got this one that I'm getting into. Of course, this is our fiction for this week, for this month. So that's volume 3 that our interviewee last night wrote, and he's done 11, and we're working on number 12 as we talked last night. I got this one in, so I'm reading it right now, the End Times in chronological order. So, understanding Matthew 24 specifically, along with Jude and Timothy and Revelation, and how all that gets put into a timeline. Thank you, Triple G Farms. That's fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate that. Then another one I got in, and this is the Catholic side of it. So this is Taylor Marshall. He used to be an Episcopalian minister, and he converted to Catholicism. And so this is his story about the apocalypse and the Antichrist and all of his biblical timeline and everything else. So I'm kind of comparing the two of those. I'm also looking at the Book of Signs, which is all the different prophecies about the end times. So that's kind of where my reading is going right now. And then, of course, we've got the Catechism in a year. So we've done all of the introduction, and so we're up to I think it's Article 35. But anyhow, just unbelievable. So let's get into tonight. And I was a little bit disappointed, to be honest with you, about the contents in tonight's first aid portion of the book that we're currently reading. I would like to tell you that we need, when we talk about first aid and we talk about SHTF, we have to have it. We have to have the discussion with a little bit of caution, because there are different levels of SHTF, if you will. And so what may pertain to one level may not pertain to another. For example, I strongly advise, if you have an HSA or an FSA, I used to be a director of HR. So after I retired from the Army, I wanted to get out of the intelligence field. I was tired of having to do the lie detector test every 6 months and pee in the bottle every month and everything else. I felt like the government had way too much information about me on a continuing basis. And I just wanted to have a life after 21 years. So I got out of the intelligence collection and analysis arena, and I got into human resources management. I spent 31 years as an HR director. So I know a little bit about how HSAs, FSAs with your healthcare takes place. And so one of the most beautiful things about an HSA or an FSA is that you have that money available to you on January 1st. And you don't have to pay it. You pay it back interest-free as a payroll deduction for the rest of the year. So if you want to spend your HSA, FSA money at the beginning of the year, one of the best purchases you can make is this Jace medical kit. And that's going to give you with 4 very common antibiotics that you're going to need in a medical SHTF situation if other medical facilities are not available to you. Dragon Slayer, welcome. Gosh, I don't know why you're not. Check and make sure that little bell is black. Where was it? I just saw you on or no, you were the comment before me on one of Prepping with Sarge's videos. Yeah, check and make sure that little bell is black. And if it's not, then I don't know what we'll have to do. We'll have to, yell from the mountaintop. How's that? So using Triple G Farms is absolutely right. So you can use that credit card that they give you with your healthcare plan. And if you, down below on any of my videos, and I'll try to have it on there before noon tomorrow, I'll put in my Jace link. And if you use that and the CWP 10, you get $10 off. So, I mean, it's not that much, but it is money off. And right now money's tight. So, you can do that and get a little bit of credit. But anyhow, when we talk about first aid, we have to understand that there's different levels. If, for example, the 7.0 that they're predicting for the San Andreas hits tonight or first thing tomorrow morning, then that's going to have, there will be other medical facilities available to people in the nearby communities. And so some of the things that we would do in a real SHTF environment, thinking that there is no medical facilities available to us, is going to be different than if we can evacuate somebody out of the area, which is different than if we can call 911. So we need to put all of this first aid and how we care for people and medicines and everything else into perspective of what is the appropriate treatment, what's the appropriate level of care they're going to give for the situation and the duration of that situation that we are experiencing. So when I went to CERT training, and CERT is the Community Emergency Response Team, one of the things that they treat us is a triage methodology. And so they have these little cards. So if a person is walking and injured, well, first you got the green cards. And so the green cards are the people, you don't need anything, do anything with them. They're just going to walk away. Doesn't look like they need any okay, thank you for letting me know that, Dragon Slayer. So you're just going to let them go. Then you kind of have a yellow card. Now, a yellow card means that they are injured, but they can walk on their own, and there's no fear of them passing out or anything else while they're walking and further injuring themselves. So, you're going to allow them to walk to the medical facility for treatment themselves. That also is going to put them in a lower priority of treatment. They're going to wait a while because it is not a life-threatening trauma. Next comes red. Now, red are the ones you're going to give treatment to. They're going to be the first ones. No, I knew that. I looked at your about me. So, and that you are both farmer, have a farmer history as well as a military history. And yeah, so I checked you out. Believe it or not, Dragon Slayer, I knew that you were a lady. So, yeah, others may not realize that, but I did. And thank you. At the end of your About Me, it says that you're praying for us, and thank you very much for that. That's always appreciated. Prepper Book Club, welcome. So anyhow, so the reds are going to get treated first. Now, those are the ones you're going to give first aid to. Those are the ones you're going to try to save, and then that's going to take care. Now we're talking about a catastrophic situation now. So then we can go up to the third one. So the third one, the final one of the group, are you going to give black cards to? So that is either they are already deceased or life functions are going to end very soon. Now, typically, what we say is, let's say that there's a bus accident, okay, and I'm the only one there, and there's 32 people on the bus, and the first person I come upon in the bus has a arterial bleed that needs a tourniquet. Do I put my tourniquet on that person up at the front of the driver at the expense of treating the other 31 people behind them? Because I don't know. Most of them some of them can be saved. Some of them may not be saved. I don't know yet. But that person up front, the rule is if you put a tourniquet on somebody, you stay with that person. So that's where you have to make some of these tough calls, okay? So what you may do is you may instruct a person on how to apply direct pressure themselves and, try to reduce the amount of blood flow while they're doing direct pressure or a pressure point. And then you're going to go check out the rest of the bus. Then once you've taken care of everybody else and categorized them, then you can come back and put the tourniquet on the person that has the arterial bleeding. So, that's one of the realities of how you do triage in a catastrophic situation. Oh, thank you, Hello Tofu. That is so fantastic of you. I was on a live with Lori today, and she was talking about how many different things were going on in her YouTube life today. That I'm surprised. Thank you so much for being here, because I know there are so many things we can do, and there are so many content creators who are conflicting with each other for time. And so the fact that you are here, believe me, I really, really appreciate you. USMC 935, welcome. So, the fact that you're giving me your ear, the fact that you're watching me, the fact that you're here with me is just an honor. And thank you very much for that. Please don't feel underappreciated, because I am here for you, and I need to earn the fact that you are here with me on a regular basis. So thank you so much for being here with me. Well, thank you, Dragon Slayer. So let's kind of get into a little bit of this. I didn't bring that much show and tell this evening because the chapter is so disappointing, to be honest with you, as far as first aid, medical and first aid. So it's not that big. The one thing I will point out, if you have the book, is there's a fantastic picture of an X-ray of a broken hand. And it is the exact same break that I did in Christmas of 2021. So it's the metacarpal, this bone right here. I fell on a flower pot and broke that metacarpal on the flower pot. And it took almost 6 months to heal. But anyhow, that's the picture of the X-ray they show when they talk about broken bones. I just thought that was kind of amusing. Let me get back here. I want to go through the summary. Okay. Quick summary for medical first aid. Keep a minimum of 30-day supply of your medications and for your family. And, that can be both over the counter as well as prescription. So one of the things that I was talking with Chris about last night is, Forstchen's book, Bill Forstchen's book, 1 Second After, his daughter perishes because they weren't able to keep a cool supply of insulin available for her. So she died basically of type 1 brittle diabetes complications. And, so he and I were having a discussion around that. And, so we are very lucky with TRICARE Medicare. TRICARE is the retired military health care, and then Medicare. So I have 3 government insurance policies. I have Medicare first, TRICARE for life second, and then my VA third. But anyhow, the great thing about TRICARE is you get a 90-day supply of medications every time it renews. They send you 3 months worth for the price of 1 month. So, if you can get into that kind of a deal with your pharmacy provider, that you're getting a 3-month prescription for the price of one, do it. And that way, you can always order it 1 month early to ensure that you have a prescription going all the time. And so make sure you can get as much of your medication as you can, and that would be fantastic if it's possible, and if you can have the discussion with your medical provider. Let's take something like Lotensin. Okay, so Lotensin is a blood pressure medication. So, I have known of people who needed 50 milligrams of Lotensin daily to manage their blood pressure. And they'll ask their physician, can I have a prescription for 100 milligrams? And then they get in that 3-month supply, and then they cut the pill in half and take half of it, which is the 50 they originally needed. And then that way they can make it into a 6-month supply. So if you're having real hard problems with money and affordability of prescriptions and things like that, and you do have a plan with your healthcare company where you can get a 3-month supply for one, talk to your physician. See if you can't do things like that. So Prepper Book Club says that he gets 3 months worth typically through Optum as well. Hello, Linda. Welcome. Oops, that's what happens when it bounces while there's people coming in. So you can do that as well. So that's something you might want to consider. Right now, there's a critical shortage of children's Tylenol. There's some other over-the-counter stuff. We were looking for some. What was it? The doctor told me to get something over the counter. Oh, it was Robitussin DM. The doctor told me get some Robitussin DM for your lungs, and I went to the hospital. Helen and I looked. Gosh. We finally found 2 bottles after about 15 minutes worth of looking. Medical supplies, even the over-the-counter stuff, is getting difficult to find. So if you can find it and you can get a little bit of a setback so that you have medications for you when you need them, that is going to be phenomenal. Number 2, everyone in your family should learn first aid. I will tell you, Red Cross has a great first aid training program. There are others that have great first aid training. This one is the one that I attended last, and this is from the American College of Emergency Physicians, and it was just a phenomenal training. After that, check with your community. A lot of communities have what's called CERT, the Community Emergency Response Team. It's free training. It's 6 weeks long, 1 night a week, 3 hours. So it's about 18 total hours worth of training. And then they have supplemental trainings afterwards. So the best training in I'm going to say the best training in 50 years of training about first aid and everything else, maybe 60 if you count Boy Scouts, was I took a class called Stop the Bleed. And they had these mannequins where you could feel for the arteries and do direct pressure on the artery. And they had tubing that was the same. It was made to emulate the tensile strength and diameter and everything else of arteries and veins, so you could feel them and depress them and stop the bleeding. And then they had a viscous fluid that was basically the same viscosity as blood. So you really felt reaching inside this dummy and feeling for the arteries and then putting pressure on the artery. You felt like you were actually doing that on a real human being. And then, of course, they taught us how to pack the bleed. So with packing, when you have an open wound and you've got arterial or venal bleeding inside, you want to pack as much sterile gauze inside that wound as possible. And that's another way of creating pressure against that artery so that you're decreasing the actual blood flow before you go into having a tourniquet. And so that was by far the absolute best training I have ever received, first aid wise, on how to stop the bleed. In the book here, they talk about using blood clotting agents and stuff like that. I will tell you, um, if you've ever used one, they burn like all get out. The person is going to be screaming. If you've ever put a tourniquet on somebody, putting a tourniquet on somebody, if you do it right, it's going to hurt like all get out. And they will scream and they might pass out from the pain of the tourniquet. I will also tell you, if you are doing CPR right, you probably will break some ribs. I drove an ambulance for quite a while and doing CPR and probably the worst one I did was we picked up a lady that was 350 pounds and she was in the bathtub in a hotel in Carmel, California. And so they called 911. We ran three of us in the ambulance because they told us that it was a large lady who was wet in the bathtub. Now imagine how we're going to get in that bathtub to lift her out in the first place. So we had to get her out of the bathtub. And then of course you want to depress the sternum. So that's if you look for where your chest bone stops and then you can feel, you're getting into basically the body cavity. That's the sternum. That's what you want to depress about 1.5 inches in order to stimulate the heart. And so if you have extremely large breasts or you have a lot of fatty tissue there, first you have to depress through that fatty tissue and breast tissue to get to the sternum and then get down. So you can be doing extremely large compressions. But that's something you're going to have to learn through experience. So make sure you get a good CPR class and that you're going to be able to do CPR and adjust based upon the different amount of body fat, the gender of the person, and how much other anatomical things there are that you have to go through in order to depress the sternum. Dragon Slayer is absolutely correct here. It's saying that as we get older, for example, me, I take vitamin C, vitamin D, Flonase, which is for osteoporosis, because my bones are getting more brittle as I get older. And part of that is if somebody tries to do CPR on me, I'm going to guarantee that they are going to break some ribs because of the osteopenia, osteoporosis that I have. And, and then calcium, of course, has a lot to do with it. Vitamin D has a lot to do with it. So, make sure that you're taking good care of that. Get a good CPR class. Another thing you can do is learn how to use an AED. That's an arterial external defibrillator. I think it's arterial. AED. Anyhow, it's basically the paddles you use to re-stimulate somebody. I'm not Flonase. I'm sorry. What am I talking about? Not Flonase. Flonase is for the nose. What does I take? Fosomax. Fosomax. Fosomax is what I take. But where were we talking about? But anyhow, older people, you're going to, and then once again, when you're getting down to infant size and everything else, the compression of the sternum is going to be minimum. You're going to use just 1 or 2 fingers and try to do that. So, there's different things. Don't think that one lesson on CPR is going to be everything. So, you've got to get a whole bunch of different applications on it. Oh, I don't know. I was talking about the external defibrillator. And so anyhow, the external defibrillator, if you have it charged, it's wonderful. The ones we had at the homeless shelter, and I had to certify all of my people on a quarterly basis on both CPR and AED because that was a requirement for the grant we had from the city, was they had to be recertified every 3 months. But the AEDs that we had were phenomenal. I mean, they told you step by step what to do. Lay the pad on the person. And basically what you did was it had a plastic sheet that laid over the person's chest, and it showed you exactly where the pads were to be put in order to get the maximum output for an electrical stimulation, electrical shock to get the heart beating again. And then you'd have to, of course, do CPR afterwards if you didn't go back into a normal rhythm. But get and AEDs are not inexpensive, but they're not expensive, but they are good to have around. Now they do have a shelf life of about 5 years. So you can probably get one for about, I think we were paying $150 for each one that we got at the homeless shelter, but we may have gotten a discount because we were a not-for-profit organization. So learn how to use an AED. I would recommend that. That's going to be a very good tool to use in a post-SHTF environment if you don't have medical facilities immediately around to help you with that. Yeah, Fosamax, but then again, you have to stop taking it like I did when they did my jaw surgery. I had to stop taking it for almost 3 weeks before the surgery because it could make it a little bit more brittle and all this other kinds of stuff. Anyhow, they told me I had to stop taking it. I just recently got back onto it. Yes. And same thing in the Army. We had an annual, but at the homeless shelter, because I guess it's because of the population we were dealing with, we had to recertify quarterly, and then we had to take first aid First aid was every other year. Yeah, I think just regular first aid was every other year. Okay. So now it talks also about recognizing the signs of stroke and treating for shock. Now let's go back. I think stroke is an important one that you need to review. And if I can find it here, that's burns. That's not stroke. So I think it was FIST was the acronym we used for stroke, if I remember right. Let me see what they have here. Gosh, I'm sorry that I don't have it all together here tonight. But anyhow, I would recommend that you familiarize yourself with the symptoms of stroke, slurred speech, limpness in the appendages. The eyes will what's the opposite of dilate? They'll get pinpointed. You could see droopiness in the face. And so those are all signs of a person having a stroke. One of the fast. Thank you, Scrapper. Thank you. And now my mind's going to go, Scrapper, if you could do me a favor and expand that for me, I would greatly appreciate it. Yes, and they recommend 250 milligram. So I take 81 milligram daily. They recommend for a stroke 250 milligrams sublingual. If you can't get them to swallow, just go ahead and put it sublingual. But make sure it's a buffered aspirin, because if you do any other kind of aspirin, it can burn the skin if you do it sublingual. So I'll check with that. Make sure you're using buffered aspirin all the time. Oh, look at this. Scrapper's coming through for us. Facial drooping, arm weakness, slurred speech, and time. Gosh, look at that. Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. When placing an emergency call, try to use the landline when possible so they can follow it back to where you are. Because once you hook up to the dispatcher, it automatically shows your location to the dispatcher. So first aid care is not meant to replace professional emergency medical treatment. An effective first aid kit is one that contains medical supplies you know how to use. Amen. So I don't care what kind of first aid kit you get. You can get the $11 one at Walmart, whatever. Let me tell you a story. Here I am, an ex-ambulance driver before EMT and paramedic and all that kinds of stuff. And I have a super duper first aid kit. I kept it in the car. I was reaching into my mailbox to get something out, and I scraped my finger on the mailbox and actually scraped the whole top of the finger off. And So I said, well, I'm late for mass, and I was going to church, and I kind of held my finger a little bit and then drove with one hand. I only had about 2-3 more blocks to go to get to the church. Got parked, and I opened up my first aid kit, and I had no Band-Aids anywhere in my first aid kit. And the woman in the car next door to me says, she put a Band-Aid on me, and I had her put on my sterile gloves, even though it was my blood and I knew it was clean. But make sure you know where things are in your own first aid kit. I got caught with my in a wallet. If you're a type 2 diabetic, a daily aspirin daily is needed. Did not know that. Thank you. Yeah, we have type 1 here in the family, so I'm not that familiar with how to treat type 2. Let me see. So pain in the back is typical of women having a heart attack. I did not know that either. So thank you for sharing that. Oh, wow. Okay. So one thing, we took a whole bunch of cookies over to our fire. So we've got our house, 2 blocks, the church, and then directly across the street from the church is the firehouse. So I mean, now they have to go half a mile to get to us because of the way the roads are laid out. But I mean, I was on the phone dialing 911 and talking to the dispatcher when my wife fell her in the kitchen and broke her hip. I could hear the sirens turning on at the firehouse before I hung up with the dispatcher. And then it only took like 2 minutes for them to get here from that point. So we are very lucky that way. Yeah, and so the dispatchers do have some really good first aid training, and they can help you through the basics until the EMTs arrive. And so that's one of the fantastic things that are going on right now. Yes, Band-Aids and triple antibiotics, absolutely. Neosporin or polysporin or anything like that, you definitely want to. And the other thing, and I showed it in a different video, but I think one of the things we need to do is everybody go out to Walmart, to your grocery store, wherever, in the first aid area. They're going to have either an aerosol spray type can where you can get sterile saline spray, or you can get a pump bottle. I like the pump bottle because I can regulate the amount of pressure that's coming out with the sterile saline. Get the sterile saline so you can cleanse the wound before you do anything else to it. You want to get rid of any dirt, any fabric, or anything else that can be in that wound, and that's going to cause infection. So the more you can cleanse that with sterile saline, the better off you're going to be. And then you apply your polysporin, neosporin, or any other kind of topical antibiotic. Then you're going to put a dressing on it, and then you're going to put your bandage on it. So, that's kind of the process of bandaging a wound. One of the things, here's the funny thing, GGG Farms. So she broke her hip. Actually, what happened was she got up at 1:00 in the morning and came in here to check her blood sugar and tripped over the dog bowl and broke her hip. And so the crew came and they, we got her taken care of and taken to the emergency room. And then they did the surgery the next day. And she went through, I'm going to say 11 months of the rehab and walking and everything else. So for the wound to totally heal takes 2 years. So she isn't even at the 1-year anniversary yet. And we decided that we're going to replace the carpet in our bedroom with hardwood flooring. So they came in, they're doing everything. The workers were carrying in some hardwood, and one of the chihuahuas got out. So I went outside to chase the chihuahua and try to get it to come back into the house, slipped on the grass, and guess what? I broke the exact same hip. I broke my right hip. So Helen called 911. The exact same crew took care of me that took care of her. And so they were looking at me, and then they looked at her and they said, "We've been to this house before. Did you trip over a dog bowl?" And so we kind of got a little, as much as I could laugh under the circumstances, we got a little bit of a laugh that it was the exact same crew that took such good care of her, also took such good care of me. I was very, very happy with them. And so just unbelievably great ambulance team. Yes. So a first aid kit, first aid replacement products, Band-Aids, polysporin, sterile saline. I like saline wash for my nose as well. So you can get that and cleanse your nose out. If you do that quite frequently, you're going to decrease the chances that you're going to have a sinus infection as well. So there's all kinds of prophylactic things you can do to your body to take care of it, to ensure that you reduce the amount of chances of obtaining an infection. So yeah, mine is the same way. That's why I laugh over the fact that here I have this EMT level first aid kit out in my truck, and I didn't have a Band-Aid for my finger. That's now you talk about oxymoron. That's about it. Like you would not believe. And yeah, both of us the right hip. As a matter of fact, what happened was when we got to the emergency room, my wife requested of the once they came in and told us, yeah, it's broken, we're going to have to operate and replace it. My wife said, well, I want this doctor. He is the surgeon who took care of me. He's fantastic, phenomenal. I had no pain. I had, the recovery was just phenomenal. And they called him, and it was his day off. And he said, but I will come in because it is a previous customer's relative. I like to take care and keep things in the family. He came in on his day off to do my surgery. I would have had a different surgeon, but he agreed to come in on his day off in order to take care of that because he had done the surgery to Helen. My recovery was totally different from hers. No two recoveries are the same. Here I am. Let me see. That was May. So we're almost 8 months later. I still have fairly high pain. I am still not as ambulatory as she was at this stage. Life has its ups and downs. That's all there is to it. Okay. So let me see. And then bodies should be buried quickly, but following some basic safety practices. As far as a show and tell, some of the things I want to do is that would not surprise me at all. Not surprise me at all. And he told me he drilled a hole into the femur, okay, into the bone in the femur, and it's a round hole because he uses a drill. And the prophylactic, the part that they put into the hip is rectangular. And he says, and that's on the reason that they surgically put a rectangle into a circle is because as the bone heals, it's going to graft onto that rectangle, and it's going to seal around it, and then you're going to have more marrow and everything else grabbing a hold of that than if it had been a circle, even of a smaller diameter. And that's just unbelievable. I mean, and I've probably got an 8-inch scar on my hip, but things are going great. It's just fantastic. So it's talking about taking care of the deceased. If you can afford it, I strongly recommend you get one of these. This is a combination stretcher body bag. Okay. So it has 8 straps on it. So you can have basically 8 people carry the load of a person. I would not use this for somebody who has an injury to the back or neck unless you can find a way of stiffening it so that you aren't causing it to bow as you're transporting them. However, this can be a makeshift stretcher for most injuries other than back and neck injuries. Then, of course, it can serve the intention it's intended, and that is it has a really nice zipper on it, and you can put a body inside of it and carry the body away. And that way there's decomposition. The book goes into the stages of decomposition. And so, it talks about first there being livor mortis and then rigor mortis and everything else. So it goes through the 5 stages of body decomposition. And that reminds me, Christian Nard, he grew up in Switzerland, and he was in my basic Russian class with me in Monterey, California, the Army Language School. And so he spoke fluently French, English, German, and Italian, and here he is studying Russian. So he and I were driving ambulances on the weekend additional income because we were both, basic sergeants in the Army and not that much money before the big pay raise. And we had to go up to San Francisco and pick up a cadaver, a body, and transport it down to Carmel Community Hospital. Well, California law says that if you have anybody in the back, you have to have another attendant in the back. So Chris was riding in the back. I was driving. And we're coming down Highway 101 from San Francisco down past Monterey and into Carmel. And we were, probably just south of San Jose, and rigor mortis set in on the body we were transporting. So a couple things happen when rigor mortis sets in. And number one, the muscles contract, and number two, the entire lung system collapses, and so you have this enormous exhalation at the same time that you're having muscles contracting. And so this cadaver, this body, was exhaled, the sudden exhalation, and Chris had the light on. He was reading a book, and at the same time that it exhaled, the left arm contracted and came up and landed on his right shoulder. And all of a sudden I heard this screeching, screaming yell from the back like you would not believe. And I pulled over to the side of the road, and here's Chris sitting there with this cadaver's arm resting on his shoulder. And he was just as white as can be. He said, "I'm driving the rest of the way." I said, "No, you're not in your condition. You're gonna stay back here." And so he wouldn't stay back there. And so finally what we did was we broke the law, and he rode up front with me because I wasn't going to let him drive. He was not emotionally capable of driving, I don't think, the rest of the way down to Carmel. But just one of the things, they're kind of set up, but very close to that. Let me see. Terabell 3, that's a new name. Thank you for joining us. Wow. Welcome. I hope you like what you're hearing here tonight, and you'll stay with us as a regular. So anyhow, what I would like to do is kind of share with you what I consider to be the essential preppers library as far as medicine and first aid. I'm not going to show you my surgical books only because I'm going to have a physician on here shortly. I am of the mindset. Remember, I told you there's different stages in how much first aid we're going to give and why, and whether or not there's medical facilities available for us to take a person to. For example, one of the things in a post-traumatic world or post-apocalyptic world is if you put a tourniquet on somebody, you know that the only person who can take it off is a physician. So what do you do if there's no physician available? That becomes an ethical question you've got to ask yourself and answer for yourself. And that can be a very difficult ethical question, is who's going to remove it? Because if you don't remove it, gangrene is going to set in. And if you asked me my choice, I would rather die of blood loss than I would die of an infection. So that's just my preference. Let me see here. I've had to do that. So I don't know who the discussion is, or with or anything else. But you know what? It can overwhelm you. And I took a couple of days off and do that. Get away from us. Get away from the negativity. That's why I focus on the solutions, and I focus on things we can do instead of the news. If you notice, very seldom do I talk about current events. Very seldom do I give you reasons why you need to prepare, because I think that's all bad news. That's all emotionally distraught. And I want to give hope. I want to give people an opportunity to do something positive that's going to be positive and have a positive effect on their lives. So that's why I don't get too much into the news, like a lot of other channels do. But even trying to be positive, sometimes some of the things we do that are positive, like discussing first aid this evening, can be negative to some people. And, if you're already distressed by everything that's going on around you, then, all that does is add a little bit more gasoline to the fire. So I would say take a break, except for this coming Saturday. this coming Saturday at 8 p.m., and that's going to be in replacement for our Monday night interview. So at 8 p.m. Saturday, we're having Prepping with Sarge on, and we're going to be interviewing him. He is a therapist for a city police department in South Carolina, and I think it's Charleston. I think it's the largest city, but he is a police therapist, and so he deals with trauma all the time. Our discussion Saturday is going to be mental health first aid. So, how do you deal with somebody who is in that frozen state of shock of what's going on around us in a post-traumatic or post-apocalyptic society? Or how do you deal with somebody who gives up on themselves and gives up on the world and doesn't have any hope for the future in a post-apocalyptic world? What can we do to help them to get them normalized again, if we can call it that? And the other part of that question that I've asked him to discuss Saturday night is, how can we tell that it's the other person who needs the mental health first aid? What if it's me that needs the mental health first aid? So what are some of the things that I can do to help myself to mentally prepare for what can happen without becoming depressed and getting ready for it? And then what can I do as a preset so that I can rapidly decompress the stress that's going to happen as a result of that? So that's going to be Saturday night at 8 o'clock with Prepping with Sarge. And he is a police therapist. So he's a PhD in psychology, and he deals with traumatic stress injury all the time. So I'm really looking forward to that discussion. So here's my library. So, of course, I showed you the book I got when I went through the course. This is the American College of Emergency Physicians First Aid Manual, just a superb first aid manual. You want to read it and become familiar with it ahead of time. You don't need to be opening a book with bloody fingers and trying to hold it open and administer first aid at the same time. That just does not work. The other one that I really, really strongly recommend, and I think this is the first edition, and they're up to probably the fourth. No, this is second edition, and they're up to like the fourth or fifth edition now. This is the Survival Medicine Handbook by Dr. Joseph Alton and his wife, Amy Alton. She's an RN, and she's also an advanced registered nurse practitioner. And so they've done a phenomenal job. Now then, if their website is doomandgloom.net, and then they have a YouTube channel here on YouTube. Follow them. They give practical first aid advice on a regular basis from a physician, and they have become the preeminent SHTF first aid experts that I would say is a go-to. And one of the things he and I totally agree on, I've been advocating it, and I tell people, please don't buy a staple kit, please don't buy a suture kit and think that you're going to suture wounds or anything else. There are rules as to which wounds you suture and which wounds you don't. If you don't know those rules, you can be setting in a terminal infection by closing the wound. Then remember that a staple or a suture, every stitch adds 2 additional puncture wounds. So you're tripling the chances of infection if you're doing the suturing or stapling in a non-sterile environment. So I recommend, what I have in my kit is I have Steri-Strips, and then I have this new zip strip. So the zip strip is basically two kind of like Steri-Strips. You're going to lay parallel to the wound, and on either side of the wound on the good skin, and then it's got like a Ziploc system that goes into each other, and you pull the Ziplocs together, and then as they ratchet together, that holds that wound closed. So you're not adding any additional wounds or puncture wounds to that wound, so you're not increasing any chance of infection. So I say, if you can get the zip stitch system, or if you can get Steri-Strips or anything like that, or butterfly closures, I strongly recommend, as a non-professional, that we cleanse the wound with sterile saline, put on polysporin, and then, if it is appropriate to close the wound, then close the wound. So let me see how we're doing here on. So Linda Boop likes my Saturday night discussion, and thank you, Hello Tofu, for putting up the link to that. We will be discussing that. Yeah, so Who's Your Prepping Nurse supports the Dr. Bones book, Dr. Alton. And let me see, that's true. No bloody fingers on the first aid books. They are the best. Who's Your Prepping Nurse? So what do you think about my advice to stay away from sutures and staplers and go with butterflies, Steri-Strips, and zip stitches? And then while we're waiting for that, then my other two books I strongly recommend. Gosh, they unfortunately came out with this just a little bit too late, but this is a phenomenal book to have. One of the appendices in this book is how to set up an infectious treatment room in your home, so that if a person is contagious, what do you need in your home to set up a, what do they call that now? When you lock somebody away from everybody else. I've forgotten the word, gosh. And I was just talking to my sister-in-law today, and she has to do it to her quarantine. So if you need to set up a quarantine room in your home because somebody has an infectious disease, how do you do that? And this book has a fantastic guide on some of the things you might want to consider about, if there is another strain of the cough comes through and you have to quarantine, and you have a person who is really infectious and you want to take care of them, and you don't want to expose the rest of the family to them, some of the things you can do. The other one that I really like is, this is phenomenal. This and this go together. So, this tells you basically, in a case where there is no medical treatment available, how to diagnose with limited access to equipment, what the problem is, and then which antibiotic to use to cure that. So I think, if you want a real good first aid library, these 4 books, I think, are the essential 4 that you need. And with those 4, you can pretty much handle almost everything you need to do. So let me see, a lot of comments here. Let me see here. Oh, thank you for that, putting that doomandbloom.net up there. Thank you so much, Hello Tofu. And Hoosier says, okay, fantastic. Thank you, Hello Tofu. Gosh, you're doing a great job tonight. Thank you. I'm sorry, Little Lone Prepper, it looks like you've suffered a devastating loss, and I have not kept up with that, and I have not put that up in the comments for everybody to see. I don't want you to think that I'm minimizing that, and I'm not paying attention to the fact that you had a very traumatic experience and very devastating, and I want to acknowledge that, but at the same time, I don't want to violate too much of your privacy. I know you're having a conversation with people, and I don't want to put that up as a key point, unless you want me to, and you want everybody to know. Then please let me know, and I'll do that. But I think that the conversation you're having with the other people and support you're getting from them is phenomenal, fantastic. I'm glad that is happening. And if there's anything that I can do, don't forget, my email is in the About Me in all of my videos. And so you can email me and give me your telephone number. I'll be happy to give you a call. We can talk about whatever we can as far as getting you some assistance or anything that you might need. Other than that, what I can offer you is prayers. And so, I spend, believe it or not, on average, an hour and a half to 2 hours in prayer every single day. And I would be more than happy to add you to my prayer list, because I think that's some, as you grow older, you appreciate it more and more. And so I'm at that point in my life now to where that's all I have left is prayer. Uh, so okay, so you're talking about the infectious disease and everything. Triple G, the antibiotics and infectious disease book is going to be uh, appropriate going forward. He just put out their most recent video that I watched was there's been a lot of discussion about people getting animal antibiotics and using those to replace human antibiotics. And he has a couple fantastic videos about that where he discusses that. I'm not going to tell you what he says. I would like for you to get it from the doctor and not from me. But I will tell you, my wife comes from a Texas ranching family. And so, they got penicillin for their cattle and horses. And I mean, it's a humongous needle, not one that you really want to enjoy. Of course, penicillin is not that fun either. But she, so when she came down with an infection, her dad would give her uh, animal penicillin, and that would knock it right out right off the bat. So that's I'll just give you that experience that we have had. Funny, when I was the master of ceremonies for the dining in at Goodfellow Air Force Base for the 511th, no 501st MI battalion, and so when we were talking about, 1 week before I was supposed to be the master of ceremonies, we were going to have 36 Medal of Honor winners, one at each table for our dining in, and I came down with laryngitis. And so I was Army on an Air Force base. So I went to the clinic, and the guy says, "Well, you've got laryngitis. We can treat it quickly or shortly. How do you want to do it?" And I said, "I need to talk by Friday." And he said, "Okay, we're going to give you some Bicillin." So he gave me these two ampules, and he says, "Now just rub these in your hands like this and get them warm, because the stuff is like toothpaste going into you." And he says, "Now, if you had a venereal disease, I wouldn't tell you to do this. We just go ahead and inject it. Then you got this ice cold toothpaste stuck in a lump." He says, "But what they did was they gave me the two ampules, and I warmed them up. They went in. I had these humongous swelling bruises, like big pimples on my cheeks." And he says, "Now go home and take a hot bath. And the hotter the bath, the better it's going to dissipate that penicillin into your body." So that was my experience with Bicillin, I should say. That was my experience with that. But I was able to speak, and I was able to be the master of ceremonies for the. Yes, no, Scrapper, outstanding suggestion. I do have it. I'm and it's a phenomenal book. Also, Where There Is No Dentist. Both of those are phenomenal books. Strongly recommend them to the Bible, to your basic um, prepping library. I think these four are kind of the essentials, and then Where There Is No Doctor, Where There Is No Dentist, I would add on top of that. I have heard that there's going to be another one out, Where There Is No Obstetrician, so that people who are involved in the delivery uh, of children, midwifery type of things, and so I think that's going to be great. Okay, so Dragon Slayer, she looked up the zip strips, and while they look expensive, they're very easy to use, better than the steri strips that she's got. Yeah, I've got one package. They are very expensive. Uh, okay, let me see where we are here. So, who's your prepping nurse does agree with me that sutures and staples can be very difficult for a layman to do, especially in a non-sterile environment. I don't know. You're throwing gasoline on a fire. The potential for an infection uh, to be there uh, in trying to treat it in a non-sterile environment is bad enough. But then when you start adding puncture wounds to that wound, that just you're throwing fuel on the fire. Um, you see. So Triple G Farms says he's going to do a few videos. Probably I missed about what is that going to be about. Um Probably about pharmaceuticals, I'm going to guess. Knowing Triple G's background, that's probably going to be about pharmaceuticals. Absolutely, absolutely. That is, I would have done it anyway, whether you wanted me to or not, because I believe in the power of prayer. Um, yeah, dining ins are fun. Uh, when after I became a warrant officer, we had four West Pointers that were at my table, and they have traditions from West Point that they do at the dining in. And so the last piece of bread on the table, they flip their knives. And it depends on whether the knife lands on the table, blade in or blade out, as to whether you're in or out of the competition for the last piece of bread. And oh gosh, it was hilarious watching the West Pointers at the table. Uh, the Prepper Book Club likes the fact that I like Dr. Alton's books. Who's your prepping nurse? I sure hope that you get feel better here. And little on prepper. Um, Gosh, all I can say is, I wish I could give you a hug. How's that? Yes, and when you're talking about antibiotic Triple G, are you talking about oral or are you talking about topical? And if you're talking about an oral, which one would be the best, in your opinion, as a pharmaceuticist, would be the best all around to have? I will tell you what one of my biggest fears, and I think I've said it several times, is a lack of sanitation in a post SHTF environment. So I'm afraid of things like typhoid, typhus, cholera, dysentery. And I think that, when we have the large concentration, and we talked about this last night, of course, with Chris in his books, and the large concentration of people we have. We saw it happen at the Super Bowl, not Super Bowl, but it was Superdome in New Orleans, the backing up of the sewage systems and fecal matter all over the ground, and people were walking in it and infested in it, and urine and everything else. And so I am just scared beyond belief that I have that under control in my house, but I'm not so sure my neighbors do, and so I'm not so sure that they aren't going to promote some sort of a disease and then carry that disease around the neighborhood. So that's my biggest fear. So that's why I have Jace. Okay, so in 1990, gosh, I'm going to say 1997, and that could be wrong. We had I was the reason we moved from that house, as a matter of fact, to where we are was we were in a mud. Here in Texas, we have municipal utility districts. So this is the people who provide water and sewage to the house. And so all of our sewage got pumped to a pumping station, and that electrical pumping station pumped all the sewage up, and then it gravity fed into the city of Austin, and we used their sewage system to treat all our sewage. Well, we had a major storm, and lightning hit that pump, and so it put the pump out of action. So now all of our sewage is going down to the pump, but the pump's not pumping it up to put it down into the city of Austin over this hill. And so it just aggregated there, coagulated there, and then kind of it overflowed. Then it overflowed into what's called Brushy Creek. Well, Brushy Creek, we had our drinking water wellhead 100 yards upstream from where the sewage was. And so we said, no problem, because all the sewage spill is downstream from where the water collection is. What we didn't realize was there was a karst, a break in the rock formation that took that raw sewage directly into the wellhead for our drinking water. And so we drank sewage for a couple of days. And my daughter was one of the first confirmed cases of cryptosporidiosis, which is, ingesting fecal matter. And let me tell you something, that is not a virus that I would wish on anyone at any time. I don't even know if it's a virus. It's a bug, but I wouldn't wish anyone at any time. And that's one of the reasons why I have this paranoia and have to have antibiotics here in the house. I want to be able to treat a situation like that should it ever happen again, because I saw what my poor daughter went through. So Triple G was talking about we need to have both oral and topical, and what you can use for the other oral, AURAL. So oral, ORAL, to take in the mouth so it gets into the bloodstream. Oral, so it's AURAL, so you can put it in your ear for those kinds of infections. So Pat Butler says she believes in keeping wounds clean, let them heal from the inside out. I had one of my hernia surgeries. They went in through my belly button, and they didn't close that. They packed it, and they had a packing material inside my belly button, and so my wife and I had to take that out, and they gave us, and it's kind of like a ribbon, for lack of a better term, that they gave us, and they gave us a tube of this ribbon for each day, and so we had to clean it out, and then they gave us a probe, and Helen had to stuff that ribbon down inside my belly button. That was fun. So let me see where we are. Scrapper. Okay, so I think that pretty much covers it for the evening. Does anybody have anything else they would like to add? One of the things I will kind of close with as a parting thought is I took a look online when I set up my first aid kit, and started focusing on what kind of things do I want to have here in the house in the event that we go into a post-apocalyptic environment. And so I said, okay, we are basically going to be campers in our own homes. And so I took a look at the statistics of what are the most common injuries that campers experience. The number one injury that campers experience are burns. And you know what? That makes sense. There was like a 30% mortality rate among housewives in the 17 and 1800s because they had long flowing skirts and they had open fireplaces that they were using to cook, and they would burn to death. Their dress would catch on fire. So a lot of them, of course, would soak their dresses in water before they got to cooking. That's where we really came into the long, full-length aprons, and they would soak that in water so that any embers would hit the water apron to try to keep them from burning to death. But that just makes sense that if we're going to be doing an awful lot of camping, type stuff, we're going to have open flames. You're going to have candles. Kids are going to burn their fingers on the candles, whatever. So number one, I would say make sure you have plenty of burn treatment capabilities. That's going to be gels. Probably if you can get it with 2 or 4% lidocaine in the burn gel as well to release some of the pain that's associated with that. Be able to identify the differences among first, second, and third degree burns. Sterile dressings, having plenty of sterile dressings that you can keep wet, and so you can allow those wounds to heal. There's going to be a lot of sprains, strains, hand and foot injuries, sprained ankles, strained ankles, and stuff like that. Falls, trips, and broken bones are going to be another one. So make sure you know how to splint broken bones. We probably aren't going to have x-rays available to us. We probably aren't going to have orthopedic surgeons available to us. So you're going to have to do the best you can at splinting. For that, I recommend everybody have a SAM splint in your first aid kit. Those are some of the best splints available to us on the open market right now. And Dragon Slayer, I'll put links on Amazon to all 4 of them in the show notes. But I will go through them one more time before we finish up here this evening. So broken bones, and then cuts, cutting wood, things like that, removing splinters, probably gashes if you don't know how to use an axe and you're trying to split wood, and that goes into your leg. Same thing with knives. If you don't know good knife safety and you're cutting towards you, you can stab yourself instead of cutting away from you, which is a safer methodology. So, those types of injuries. Just think of, if I were to go camping, what are the things I could probably do? Burn, break, um, cuts, and infectious wounds like that. Animal bites are going to be, a lot more than what they are now. So how do I cleanse an animal bite? How do I probably apply some sort of antibiotic to it? How do I dress that? Those are the common sense things I'm going to recommend that you do an inventory of and say, what are the most common things that happen camping that will probably happen in my home in a post-apocalyptic environment? So let me see here. Prepper Book Club says he agrees that dysentery is a huge killer in the world. So be prepared for that. So that's there. There's a couple things. So in this one, remember, it talks about how to treat dysentery. It also talks about the antibiotics for it. It also talks about because dysentery can be infectious. So, how to set up one of those home infirmaries where you're going to have that person kept away from the other people so you don't spread that disease. Okay, so let me see here. I see a lot of hand injuries, doing things manually that they have not done before. Great tip. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. And practice. Know where the stuff is. Like I got caught with my pants down and my own first aid kit, and I couldn't find Band-Aids. So, go through those on a regular basis. I have probably 20 boxes of just Band-Aids here in the house because I think that's, over a course of a couple of years, I would probably go through those. I can't believe I didn't have one box in my first aid kit. That's just totally irresponsible of me. Okay, so let me go through the 4 books again that I strongly recommend. I'll put links for these in the show notes. I'll have them there hopefully by noon tomorrow. I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. I have my pulmonology appointment tomorrow. And so we have to renew the prescription for my oxygen tanks. So, and that's quite a process. So number 1 book I'm going to recommend is the American College of Emergency Physicians First Aid Manual. The American College of Emergency Physicians also has, in my opinion, the best CPR AED training that there is. So see if you can't hook up and get that as well. The next one is going to be Alton's Antibiotics and Infectious Disease by Dr. What's his first name? Joseph Alton and his wife, Amy Alton, nurse practitioner. The next one is going to be the Pandemic Preparedness Guide. So everything you need to do to set aside an area, how you can prepare your family for quarantine so that you don't get it from other people and protect other people. And then, of course, this is probably one of the best books out there. This is Dr. Alton and his wife put this together, Nurse Amy, the Survival Medicine Handbook. So those are the 4 books I strongly recommend. I want to add 2 more to it, and that is Where There Is No Physician and Where There Is No Dentist. So both of those are outstanding books as well. Let me finish up with the comments, and then we'll close this down. You know what, Scrapper? Fantastic advice. Let me add to that what the old Western and Native Americans did for wounds was honey. So honey is also another one of those topical salves that you can put on a wound to help it to reduce the amount of infection. So that's another great one you can do. Triple G, thank you so much. You are just so phenomenal with the super chats. I really appreciate you. We've got to get together for that cup of coffee. He just lives about an hour up the road from me, so we got to get together. Okay, take care, Pat. Happy New Year, by the way. Okay, so I'm gonna Triple G Farms, thank you so much. Now, please understand, 60% of that is going to go to different people. 40% here in the community for the Williamson County Food Bank. So we're this county just south of you, just south of Lampasas County. And so that's going to go to our county food bank, and 20% is going to go to disaster response services other than Red Cross. So thank you all so much for being here. I'm so lucky to have you. I appreciate you. Do me a favor. We've got a couple great interviews coming up. We've got that interview coming up on Saturday. We're going to be talking about post-traumatic stress and how we can deal with it in others. So emotional first aid, and how we can deal with it in ourselves. And that's going to be with Prepping with Sarge. Then I've got a confirmation from a good friend of mine, J.J. Johnson from Reality Survival. He is an Air Force SERE instructor. So that's SERE, Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape. So he teaches the pilots how to survive if they get shot down in enemy territory. And so he has a lot of experience in overseas. He has a lot of experience in bushcraft type stuff and, survival as an individual out in the wild. So we'll be talking to him about that. I've got a couple physicians who are going to be coming on in the very near future. I've got a couple emails out to a couple other authors of books, and we'll see if we can't get them in for the interviews as well. I did, in my discussion last night after the interview with Chris, I found out that he and another fellow wrote a book, and I ordered it yesterday. It's going to arrive here tomorrow from Amazon. I'm going to take a look at that. That may be the book that we do as far as a nonfiction when we finish up with this one. And I'm hoping it meets the level to beat this book. So we'll see where we are with that. So with that, as we remember, this is God talking to Moses and the book of Numbers. And he says, this is how you shall bless the Israelites and say unto them. And so you are included in that. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you, be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and give you peace. So please remember that we're all in this together so we can come out of it together. Thank you for your phenomenal comments and the tips that you add to the conversation. Your knowledge is just as important as the books that we read. And I thank you very, very much for that. So be kind, polite, and respectful to each other because togetherness is the key. Happy New Year, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.